welcome to the Krueg Show, everybody. A little Niners-Texans preview, 49er preseason game number 3 coming up. And who better to break it all down with? Jack Hammer does a phenomenal job covering the NFL and the 49ers for the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat. And he's with us on the Krueg Show. Hey, Jack, what's going on? How are you?
How you doing, Larry? Good. Ready for the game tomorrow.
Yeah, I am too. And why don't we start with Trey Lance? Because I'm hearing that Trey Lance is going to play in the first half, but not in the second half. That's what Shanahan basically has stated. And Trey's had some very good practices. And then Trey's had some practices where he's scattershot as far as his accuracy, and he's all over the place. What do you think Kyle Shanahan wants to see from Trey Lance in this third preseason game against the Texans?
I think he's looking for some consistency from Trey Lance and from the 49ers offense. I think that's why, he said a couple of different things in 2 days. Yesterday, he said that the Lance and the offense would play a half. Today, or this morning, he said it'd be a couple series. But I think really what he's looking for is just to have some consistency. If they can put a couple of drives together that are good, then they'll probably play a couple of drives. If they're struggling and they can't find rhythm, then they'll probably stick out there for the whole half. So how well they perform will depend on how long they stay out there.
What do you think so far from Trey? I mean, we've seen the good, the bad. Overall, how would you evaluate? Or if somebody who hadn't seen a minute of the preseason or hadn't seen a minute of training camp, and they said, Jack, I know you're there, boots on the ground. How would you evaluate, or what would you say to describe the way Trey Lance has looked?
I think what you just said really, sums it up. It's some good, some bad. I'd say there's probably a little bit more good than bad. You can see the explosiveness. You can see the playmaking ability. You can see his ability to move. He's just lacking in consistency with his arm. He's just not. His accuracy goes in and out, and that's really what I think is kind of holding him back from us being able to say that it's been a good camp.
As far as, do you see any common denominators in his struggles, or is it random day to day?
It really seems like it's kind of random day to day. His mechanics are all over the place. Sometimes he's, when he's kind of a little bit loose with his mechanics at times. It just seems like his footwork isn't there all the time. Yesterday, they spent a lot of time working with him on his footwork. Between Brian Greasy stopped him a couple of times and had him talk to him a little bit about, look like his footwork, mechanical stuff. And then there was a play where he took off scrambling, and when he got done with it, Kyle Shanahan pulled him aside, and it looked like he was talking to him about his footwork, like he'd maybe hitched a couple, once too many times, kind of thing on the play. So it seemed like there was definitely they're making a conscious effort to look at the mechanical stuff yesterday.
I get this question a lot. I'll throw it to you. I mean, what's the tangible difference, do you think, between the 49er offense with Jimmy Garoppolo at the helm versus what we're going to see this year with Trey?
The ability for the quarterback to save the offensive line and move and make plays, those secondary plays. I think that's the one thing that we didn't really see a whole lot of out of Jimmy Garoppolo. He could move early on, and then after he hurt his knee, he wasn't quite so mobile. Lance just moves so fluidly. And I think that's the biggest difference, his ability to move around, buy time, keep his eyes downfield, and then make that second play.
I love what I've seen from Lance as far as the deep ball. I think he's throwing that deep ball better than any quarterback I've seen wearing a 49er uniform, maybe since Steve Young. I mean, I don't think Garcia threw the deep ball particularly well. I didn't think Kaepernick or Alex Smith threw the deep ball all that well. Jimmy's deep ball is, to me, very inaccurate. I like what I'm seeing as far as the deep ball. Do you think the 49ers are going to be a quick strike down the field passing attack this year? Because Lance seems to be, it seems like he has real rhythm when he's throwing the ball deep.
Yeah, I do think we're going to see the ball go down the field more often. It matches up with what he does. You saw him, he did that quite a bit in college on stuff that's similar to what the 49ers already run. And we've seen it in practice. The ball's going downfield more often. So I do think we're going to see some more deep shots, or even if it's not a deep shot, you're going to see more balls going into that 50 to 20 plus range.
We've seen a little triple option at times in practice, and the triple option. When I think of the triple option, I think of Navy. Before that, I think of Paul Johnson and Georgia Tech, who's the retired coach there at G Tech, and they ran it quite liberally. There's a lot of different ways to run the triple option. We're seeing little glimpses of it from time to time in practice. What's your guess as how often they will utilize it?
It's interesting because it's the way that they get into it with Deebo Samuel and Raymond McLeod. It's an interesting, look because those guys will line up sometime behind the quarterback, sometimes next to him. You can't really, set up for it. So I think it's something that the 49ers can use, not as their staple of their run game, but definitely as an offshoot of what they already do. Every time Deebo Samuel goes in motion, it just causes so much stress on the defense, and it's just another wrinkle that they can use. They did it a little bit last year, but they really focused on it more this year.
Let's talk a little bit about the other main question of the night outside of, can Trey and the offense establish a little rhythm, whether it's 2 series, 3 series, whether they're in there the entire first half. I think Kyle Shanahan wants to see a little rhythm to his offense, especially since this is the final tune-up. But the other major question is going to be the roster bubble. How many guys do you think enter? Do you think the 49ers have a real good idea of who's going to be on the 53 right now? Or do you think that this game is going to have a huge impact on that final 53?
I don't know if the game's going to have a huge impact. I think they kind of have an idea who it is, but it's that last glimpse that they get to see, right? So, does Jordan Willis make this roster over Kerry Hyder? Does Jason Poe make the roster? Do they decide to go with 8 or 9 offensive linemen, that kind of thing? Even in the secondary, Ambry Thomas isn't going to be able to play, but how are they going to set that group up? Because I think Thomas is one of those bubble guys, and then you have a lot of good players behind him, Tariq Castro-Fields and Quantrez Knight on the outside, and even at safety, Tayshaun Gibson and Dante Johnson. How do you work that out, especially with Jimmy Ward being injured and Mike McGlinchey dealing with what he's dealing? How do you put this roster together? I think there's some really interesting competitions there.
There really is. I mean, I counted like 7 or 8 different battles that I'm going to be looking for. Let's talk about the number 2 quarterback. At times we've seen Kyle Shanahan go with 3 quarterbacks, but the last couple of years he's gone with 2. They do have one of the deeper rosters in the league, so I think the desire initially would be to go with 2. But man, Brock Purdy has played awfully well, and it would be I just don't know that he clears waivers. And I think John Lynch, when he was on the radio this week talking about it, his comments kind of reflect that he's very satisfied with Purdy, that he likes what he's seen, and that the quarterback position is not like tackle or tight end or wide receiver or D-line, where you can just, say the numbers game. These teams, if they have a quarterback they like or comfortable with, they're very hesitant to put that player through waivers, which is the process that you have to go through if you're going to slide from the 53 onto the practice squad. What's your best guess? Are they a 2 quarterback team? Are they a 3 quarterback team? Has Purdy now made them become a 3 quarterback team, or does he have more to show in this game?
I think they're going to be a 2 quarterback team. I don't think they're going to be 3, just because it's so important that, a third quarterback. Do you have a third quarterback, or do you keep another position player on the roster? That's kind of the question. I think a position player is more important than your third string quarterback. It's an interesting one, though, because they gave Nate Sudfeld $2 million guaranteed. Now, I wonder if some of the reason that they gave him that $2 million is so that they could cut him and put him on the practice squad, so that they could keep a guy like Brock Purdy on the active roster, because that way you have all 3 of them in your building, and you're not going to, Nate Sudfeld won't leave to go somewhere else. He'll stay with the 49ers, and because he's got the money, and he can be get called up on game day to be the backup. So it's an interesting one, though, really.
What's your evaluation of Purdy? I mean, are you in the camp that says, oh, you know what, he's Nick Mullins? I've heard that comparison so many times this week. I'm pushing back kind of aggressively on that, saying I see a significantly better player than Nick Mullins. But it is preseason. It's hard to evaluate. He is a little bit undersized. His arm strength may be a tad underwhelming, but I see a player has way more calm, way more experience. To me, he seems far more dependable than Nick Mullins ever was. but it's only based on 2 preseason games and watching him a little bit at Iowa State. Where are you on Purdy and how he's played?
I think Purdy's played really well. The Nick Mullins thing is I think it's accurate. I think there's a lot of Nick Mullins in him, except for he can move. Nick Mullins couldn't move the way that Purdy is much more mobile. That's one of the things about this 49ers quarterback room is they went from a Purdy, a room that couldn't really move 2 years ago to all 3 of the quarterbacks that are on the roster can really get outside the tackles and move and scramble and run around. I like Purdy. I think he's a lot like Nick Mullins. He can move around better. Doesn't have the big arm, but you see him make plays. Every time he's on the field, he makes plays, and that's what it's really about. I heard so much negativity about him in training camp from early on, and I don't know what people were seeing there, because everything I've seen from him, he makes plays and he doesn't have a cannon arm, but he has enough of an arm to make 90% of what Kyle Shanahan wants.
It's funny. Paul Perriman says Krug loves him some Purdy. I do. I'm all in on Brock Purdy, and I would not expose him to waivers, because I just think that when you look at who was the team, was it the Vikings that just traded a 7th round pick for Nick Mullins?
Yes.
If they're willing to trade a 7th round pick for Nick Mullins, I think that there's probably a handful of teams that, based on what they saw from Purdy in college and what he's produced so far in the preseason, that would say, you know what? We'll take that player. If I'm Seattle, I'd almost rather have Purdy than have Jimmy, just from the standpoint of, you could sign Purdy to a very reasonable contract, and if Geno or Locke fall on their face or both, you might have an underrated quarterback there who's got a little moxie to him.
Yeah, I don't know if I would go that far, but I do think that he can help some teams out and be a maybe a solid backup. Saying that he would be able to be a starter, I know that there's some similarities with Garoppolo in terms of, some of the stuff that they do, but I think there's still a gap between those two.
Flav donates $4.99. He says, I think it would be crazy to risk losing Purdy with how he's looked, but this O-line, it would be insane. Quarterbacks could be injured quick with these guys. Let's move to the offensive line. I think that was one of the biggest questions coming into this camp, is how would the 49ers offensive line come together with all the rookies and all the different investments they've made. And obviously Trent Williams anchoring the thing as the best left tackle in pro football. And then on the other tackle, you get Mike McGlinchey, who we don't know his status really, right? We don't know exactly how he's going to be. What do you view McGlinchey's status as going left to right? Who do you think their best offensive line is?
I think their best offensive line as it stands now is pretty much what they're stuck with, which is Williams and Banks, and I think it's going to be Brendel at center, Spencer Burford at right guard, and then if McGlinchey's healthy, him at right tackle. But if not, Colton McKivitz fits the bill. He's been the next best for them out at tackle, so that would be their best group that's healthy right now. McGlinchey was limping quite a bit yesterday.
What is his status? Now, he had a quad situation, but now that's healed and it's a knee. Is it the same leg that he had the quad injury?
It's the same leg, yeah, except for it's the knee, and so they're dealing with some stuff there. And he was out there yesterday on the side field, but you can see that it's bothering him a little bit.
How about Poe? A lot of people are talking about Poe. He's looked really, really good. And, Jason Poe played at Mercer, and he's probably 6 feet tall. But, man, he had that pulling block where he just buckled the D lineman. It was a beautiful block. Trent Williams talks about him in glowing terms. I see a guy who looks like, to me, the way he moves, as athletic and as quick as he is, to me, he looks like a Pro Bowl caliber prospect. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked at all if this guy played in the Pro Bowl at some point in his career. But he is short, and he doesn't fit that NFL size, speed box that they want in each position. How do you evaluate what you've seen from Jason Poe?
I think that Jason Poe is the most improved 49er that I've seen since rookie training camp, rookie mini camp to where he is now in training camp. I think he's the most improved. And you're right. The guy, he's so quick to the second level, so quick down the line when he's pulling.
Strong too. Very
he's strong as heck. And his speed helps him. even if he kind of gets beat a little bit in pass protection, he's quick enough to be able to get over and kind of finish the block off. So, I think he's right on the edge. I think that's one of those spots where it depends on how many guys they take. If they take 9, he makes the team. If they take 8, I don't think he does.
Val Ramos donates a couple bucks. Says, Larry, I 100% agree with you on Brock Purdy. All right, there we go. Val Ramos and me leading the Brock Purdy fan club. Let's talk about the backfield. They're stacked in the backfield. Man, I mean, what a great problem to have. They got an abundance of riches. They got more backs than they know what to do with. To me, TDP makes it. Jeff Wilson makes it. Elijah Mitchell makes it. And Juice makes it. So there's 4. Are they going to keep 5? Are they going to keep 6? If they keep 5, do they go with Hasty? Do they keep Jordan Mason? Do they keep Trey Sermon? Do they go 6 and try to steal a roster spot from another part of their roster? It's really this is really a tough question. I love what I've seen from Jordan Mason, and none of it looks accidental. This kid played in the ACC. If you watch his ACC film, it's impressive. Guy averaged 5.2 yards a carry in the conference over his career, not for a year. 5.2 for his entire career. Is Jordan Mason going to beat out Trey Sermon? If Jack Hammer were the head coach, would he?
I think if you took the numbers and the names off the back of the jerseys and you just watched the guys play, Trey Sermon and Ty Davis Price would not make this roster. I think that you'd go with Elijah Mitchell and you'd go with Jeff Wilson Jr. and Jermichael Hasty and Jordan Mason. Those have been the 4 best running backs. Sermon and Davis Price have not been, but they were drafted in the 3rd round. So that's why they're part of the discussion. If those weren't 3rd round draft picks, I don't think we're talking about them. So for me, I would go with the other 4. I don't think that's what's going to happen though.
Who do you think they'll ultimately go with?
I think that Davis Price is going to make it, and Sermon, I think, maybe a little bit more on the bubble than we realize, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with. It's going to be between Hasty and Mason. One of those guys might be able to knock him off, just because those guys at least hit the hole.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing about Sermon is he looks a little hesitant. And when you watch Mason, he runs with tremendous contact balance. I mean, he takes hits. Doesn't seem like he loses his footwork. I mean, I'm not saying he's Barry Sanders, but he clearly is a hard guy to knock off his pins. JCK510 says, package Sermon and Jimmy for a bag of chips. You might as well. This might be the time of the live stream where I ask you about Jimmy. What? First of all, I think that it is interesting, the idea of packaging Jimmy and Sermon. What do you think of that concept? Do you think the Jimmy trade discussion is worth having at all, or do you think it's just simply a fait accompli at this point that they're going to release Jimmy?
It really just kind of seems like it's not going to happen. Like they're just going to end up having to release him because it's crazy to me that he can play and win games for teams, but. Whether it's the trade compensation that they'd have to give up or what the contract looks like, nobody's making that move. And I just think the Flyers are going to be stuck having to release him. It would be crazy, in my opinion, for them to keep $25 million on the roster when the guy doesn't even practice with you.
I guess the other question then what comes up is, can the 49ers look everybody in the eye and say what they said at the beginning of the offseason, which we're going to work with Jimmy to find him a home? Are they still working together with Jimmy to find him a home, or has the surgery changed? Now everybody's about themselves. Jimmy's about himself. Niners about themselves. I mean, can you say that you did right by Jimmy if you hold him hostage until the 11th hour and then let him walk for nothing? Or do you have to trade? Do you have to get compensation to save face on this? Give me your read on the whole Garoppolo situation and how it's going to play publicly, and also their stance that they were going to do right by Jimmy, and now it seems like they're holding Jimmy. The Mayoko report yesterday was that somebody with the Niners expects him to wind up in Seattle. That makes it sound like they're just going to, like, they don't have control of the situation and they're just trying to delay him joining the Seahawks.
Yeah, they've kind of talked out of both sides with this one, because they have said a lot that they're going to do what's best for Jimmy, or try to do what's best for Jimmy, do right by Jimmy. But they've also said a number of times that they're going to do what's best for the 49ers. So that's kind of their out. You know, they've gone both ways on this, so that either way they can say that they were in the right all the way through. You know, for Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't know why you're keeping him at this point unless somebody gets injured this week. I think this weekend, if everybody comes out of this at 100%, you're going to be releasing him in a couple of days, and it's going to be tough for Garoppolo to hook on really with anybody that's going to give him any kind of a chance to really be a starter this year now.
Is there any chance that there'll be some I mean, like we saw the 49ers go to Minnesota. Obviously, they thought it was a good idea. Brandon Ayuk said the whole thing was stupid. I was like, I don't know, it's worthless or whatever he said. And it totally it wasn't like singing the company line. It was like going against the company line. Is there going to be somebody in that locker room who goes against the company line on Garoppolo and speaks out and says, you know what? The Niners did Jimmy wrong. Is that player going to be heard from, or do you think everybody stays quiet?
I think they'll be staying quiet. There's guys who, that really have still talked positive about Jimmy Garoppolo that I think really do like him, like Eric Armstead did earlier this offseason and so on. But at this point, they've all kind of turned the page to Trey Lance, and I don't think there's anybody that's going to go out of their way at this point to say, hey, Jimmy got the short end of the deal here.
On the goal line donates $4.99. Says the Jimmy situation makes no sense. Keeping him is messed up to Jimmy, and thinking a trade is going to happen seems like a joke at this point. There's a lot of sentiment like that. By the way, MF in the chat says Pro Football Focus ranked Brock Purdy as the second best rookie quarterback in the preseason. How much credence do you put into Pro Football Focus? How much do you think that, when you see their evaluations, their grades, do you put it down in ink? You don't give it a second thought? Where do you put their evaluations in the whole grand scheme of things?
I don't really, when it comes to like their grading system and that kind of stuff, I don't give it a whole lot, especially something like this, and the reason is if it was one guy that was grading everybody and they're grading it the same, then I would put something into it. But you've got a group of people that are all doing it. I know they have try to make everybody do it the same, but there's no way you can put 25, even 16 people in a room, whatever, 10, and get them all to be able to come up with the same numbers on everything. So when it comes to their grades and saying he's the second best rookie or whatever, I don't put a whole lot into that. But Purdy's looked good. The 49ers felt like Purdy was one of the best rookies coming out in this class, and he's performed well when he's been given a chance. He hasn't worked against starters yet, but he's played well.
Yeah. And what we saw in the games, folks, is what we are seeing at practice for the most part. He's on time. I was joking around earlier on one of the live streams. I'm like, it's not playing quarterback is not like being a worker in another line of work. If you show up early for work, that's good in other lines of work. You can't be early as an NFL quarterback. You have to be on time, right? You can't be early. You can't be late. Brock Purdy has been on time most of camp. And in these two preseason games, that's what's so impressive to me. Let me ask you about tight end, because I think tight end's interesting. If you had said to me, give me the tight end that stands out to you, I would have said the guy they just cut, Tanner Hudson. Tanner Hudson has stood out to me. He stood out to me as a blocker. He stood out to me as a receiver. To me, outside of Kittle, I think Tanner Hudson looked like the best tight end in camp. And I only have the 49ers on my final 53, which I did last night or 2 nights ago, with 2 tight ends, because I look at it as you could use Juwan Jennings if you flexed out that third tight end. You could use Jason Poe if you wanted to go jumbo package and have another blocker on the line of scrimmage. So I don't see that need for a third tight end. I had Charlie Warner and Kittle as the only 2 tight ends making the team. How's your 53? How many tight ends are you going with? I've heard of many people say they're going to go with 4.
I don't think they'll go with 4. If they go with 4, that makes it tough somewhere in a lot of other places. I think they'll go with 3. And I really like Tyler Kroft. I think Tyler Kroft has had a really good training camp and preseason. I've really liked what I've seen out of him. I would put him over. I myself would put him over Ross Dwelley, just because Charlie Warner, he's a little bit more of the guy that they use to kind of bang inside. I think that Croft gives you a good, it's a kind of a good balance. He's very similar to, he gives you that ability he's a good blocker, but he's also really good with his hands down the field.
What do you think of my concept? Save the roster spot and go with 2 and use Jennings and Poe if those guys made the roster as your pseudo third tight end.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy at all. I like it from the standpoint. I think Jennings fits as that move tight end kind of guy that they've been trying to get for a while. I think that he can run. You'll see them run a lot of stuff where he is the guy that's kind of like their second tight end anyway. I don't think it's all that crazy to do that. I don't think Shanahan will go in that direction because I know he likes his tight ends. So I think they'll keep 3, but I wouldn't. If that was the case, I wouldn't be shocked.
How about 5 wide receivers or 6?
Yeah, why not? Because that's the thing, another one of those positions. Because behind those top 5 guys, you know who those are. Everybody else is veteran guys, other than Tay Martin. The only reason I think you keep one of those extra receivers is if you need them for special teams, because you're not going to get them on anywhere else.
Yeah, I like what I've seen out of Tay Martin, but he's done so little in the preseason games. It makes me feel like he's a practice squad for sure guy. I mean, that seems like the game plan there. But if it really came down to we're going to take a 6th receiver, my vote would be Tay Martin over Turner, over Snead, over Marcus Johnson, over the rest of the crew. I'd go with Tay Martin, but that's not based on what I've seen in this camp. That's based on what I saw at Oak State. That's based on what I saw at Wazoo. That's based on what I saw against Notre Dame in the bowl game. It's not necessarily based on the preseason or this camp. But he is a nice looking prospect. He lacks a little speed and quickness, but he's got good size. He's got great hands, and he's an accomplished receiver. You think? I think I would definitely go with 5. I don't think I would go with Turner. I know Turner's probably in the lead for that 6th spot, but I think I'd rather go with 5 and take that roster spot and use it on somebody else. Ray McLeod and Danny Gray in the top 3. I'd be okay with that. And because especially if you're using if you're going to have Hasty, because now you got a guy you could split out.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't, I don't think that's a bad way of going. If you go with 5 there, you take an extra running back. It works out well for you. And like you said, you could have Tay Martin or maybe one of those veterans on your practice squad as well. Cause that's the other piece too. There's 53-man roster, but you also have 16 guys on the practice squad that can come up and down as necessary. So, that's the other piece to look at it. So Tay Martin would be a good one.
Yeah, I love Tay Martin, but once again, I loved him coming into the camp. Sons of Johnny LeMaster says, here's $9.99. Solo Krueg is the best show. Oh, okay. Realistic regular season record. What do you think, Jack? Realistic regular season record for the Niners. I think they're a double-digit win team. I think they're a 10-win team for sure. I actually could see, if you say make me predict it, I'll predict 11 and 6, but 10 and 7, 11 and 6, I think that's the sweet spot. If it's anything less than that, I think they're underachieving. We'll know after the first 6 weeks. If they start off 6-0, I think they can get to 13. If they start 4-2, I think they end up, like you said, 10 or 11. Okay. Let's talk about the deepest spot on the team, and that's D-line. I mean, exceptionally deep defensive line. Mm-hmm. I have 11 D linemen on my 53. Do you remember what you had as far as your 53? How many D linemen?
I believe I had 10 originally. I think that I'm still right around that number. I had Jordan Willis not making it, and Kerry Hyder was on. I think that's one of those positions that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because Willis and Hyder, there's not a lot of difference between those two. Willis gives you a little bit more on the special team side than you don't get any of that from Hyder. So I think that might be what separates those two. But I really like that group. Alex Verrett is probably not going to make it, but he shows that he can. Yeah.
I mean, he looks good, doesn't he? I mean, they're using him as a tackle.
Yeah, this is a group that can go 12 deep really easily if they could. The only guys that I say probably Kevin Atkins is really the only guy, and that's just because he's an undrafted rookie free agent. Everybody else on this team is NFL caliber. Yeah.
Akeem Spence, I think I would probably cut him off if it came down to two between Willis, Kamoko Toure, and Barrett. Who are you keeping?
I would be keeping Kimoko Ture first, and then Willis, I think, would be my second.
What do you like more about Ture than Willis? Because Willis definitely he's a bigger bodied guy than he was at K-State. I mean, at K-State, he ran in the 4.5s. And now he's maybe lost a little bit of that speed, but he's definitely he's put on 10 pounds. I mean, he looks almost like a combo tackle end. He's wearing 75. Maybe that's what makes him look bigger out there. But I think Willis looks impressive to me. He just keeps coming. And then Ture just seems like, and Bosa said it. He said, man, this guy plays bigger in the games and he doesn't practice. And, that's always a feather in your cap.
Yeah, the thing with Ture, and I think partly why he shows that way is because they're able to tackle in the games, and he's just so good against the run. Against Green Bay, he made a number of stops at or behind the line of scrimmage, and he shows up against the run game. He's solid against the pass, and that's kind of why I have him in there where I do. I think that Charles Omenihu is another one that's interesting because he's an outside guy, but he can play inside. There's just so much versatility with this group when you start to dig through it.
Yeah. Menahue's dropped some LBs, but man, I've been impressed by him too. He's angular. He's long. It's like they really love that kind of bigger version of a defensive end, like Drake Jackson, like a Menahue, like Arden Key last year. So they can play games up inside and stunt guys and line them up at tackle and stun them outside, line them up at end and stun them inside and let them take on a guard. I mean, it seems like, they've abandoned the speed rusher, super light end for the guy who's closer to 265, 270, could rush inside or outside. Are you noticing that as well?
Yeah, no, he definitely can go both either side, inside or out. That's one of the things. It's this, Drake Jackson, even they're doing that with him, right? They're even lining up Drake Jackson at times in training camp inside instead of just outside. So, all that versatility. Could you imagine Nick Bosa and Drake Jackson lined up together on the same side, in a pass rushing situation with Samson Ebukam and maybe, Charles Omenihu? I mean, that's just or Eric Armstead. That's just, pure speed on the field. That'd be just, I think, really tough for an offense to be able to slow down.
Couple D linemen I want your thoughts on. MF says, has Ridgeway looked good? That's Hassan Ridgeway, the former Eagle. And then Drake Jackson. Give me your thoughts on Ridgeway and Jackson, two of the new faces on that D line.
Yeah, Ridgeway, I haven't really seen a whole lot of him. It's kind of hard to, he's been okay. Don't really get, he's playing inside. You don't really see him making very many plays just because he's inside. It's not as Drake Jackson. You can see him because he's out on the edge. And the Jackson stuff, my gosh, you watch this game from Minnesota and you can go through his film and there's, I cut up, I think 8 or 10 plays of his for a highlight package that I put together on my channel the other day. It's just, he does everything. He can stop the run. He's just so athletic. This guy gets knocked on the ground and still makes plays. The interception that they had at the beginning, the George Odom interception, that's all set up by Drake Jackson on his pass rush coming inside. Slips a little bit, but he's still able to get there and put a hand in the face of Kellen Mond and force him to kind of short arm that throw. And then there's a play later on where he slips and gets back up and bats the ball away on a screen. And it was just a really good all-around game for Drake Jackson. He's another one of those guys. I know when we talked about him after OTAs, we weren't so hot on him, but
right.
My gosh, what he's done in training camp is amazing.
Is he, in your mind, going to surpass Samson Ebukam as the starter opposite Bosa?
At some point he will. I don't know if it's going to be right off the top, but at some point they will. That's the other part that's so fun with this team, watching them at training camp, right? Was like a couple of weeks ago, it was Fred Warner working on some pass rush stuff, and Nick Bosa comes jogging over and he shows them the moves, and they're working together. And then just the other day on yesterday at practice, Ebukam and Drake Jackson are working together on pass rush moves, and Jackson's coming after Ebukam's job, but he's still standing there helping him out and talking him through things.
Very cool. Very cool. They got quality depth for sure and a great culture. Flav donates $4.99. He says, if Trey Lance looked as good with his timing and accuracy versus no defense as Purdy has against the second and third string D, I would feel 100 times better about the year. I'm not as worried about Trey as other people. I just think that Trey is got a good head on his shoulders. I don't think he's going to make mistakes repeatedly over and over and over again, the same mistake. I see a guy who's loves the process of football and gets better and better and better. And just listening to Bosa, listening to Kittle, listening to Trent, listening to Kyle, listening to the guys talk about Trey, they really he's established, even though he's 22, he's established himself as the leader. And you don't do that without putting in the mental reps, without being impressive in the meetings, without taking charge on the field, without improving your mistakes, without being accountable. Well, several of the factors that just don't come through on the film and may not show itself in the preseason. And I'm hearing that from the other players and from the coaches. I'm not concerned about Trey. I guess my bigger concern was last year when I saw him take on Isaiah Simmons. When I saw him slide down, I thought, you know what? There's growth there, because last year he would have taken on the defender. Now he's sliding down. That's real growth. So maybe I should have more consternation about Trey, but I just don't. I think it's going to come together. I don't think he's got to shoulder this whole load. I think he's buffered by some tremendous weapons.
No, I think you're right. I think once the games get going and everything starts to work, he has some issues, but at the same time, he has such a good group around him, and they're going to insulate him a little bit. And I think really the goal going into this year with Trey Lance is for him to throw 23 to 25 times a game. If you can keep him around that number, I think the 49ers expect to win a lot of games. It's not a lot different than what they did last year in the second half, right? Second half of the season, they pretty much said, we're going to try to keep Jimmy to 20 to 25 passes a game and run the ball 40, and that's how we're going to win. And once they start doing that on a regular basis, they start to win. I think that's their mindset this year with Trey Lance. And you're gonna struggle at times, but you're gonna get some deeper shots, and that's where you're gonna get the explosives.
I've gotten this question a bunch of times, so I wanted to throw it your way. He says, Los D says, guys, why isn't Jason Poe being looked at center? That was his natural position out of college. I think Jake Brendel can be beaten out over Aaron Banks. We've actually seen Poe run at times with the ones at left guard. Do you think that, are you surprised that they haven't used Poe at center? Do you think there's a chance that Poe unseats Banks at left guard?
It's not going to be in the beginning of the season. Well, it's not going to be right off the bat, but it's starting to trend that way. The fact that he's getting reps at all with the ones, if you had asked me that back at the start of training camp, I would never have thought that would be happening. But he's really come on, and I think he's going to be able to push Banks a little bit here. As far as the stuff at center, we haven't seen him take one snap there. He hasn't done anything there. So I don't think that's in play at all for him. But he's definitely impressing Chris Furster, because he's getting him on the field.
No doubt. Let's talk about the linebacking core. It may be the best linebacking core in the game. Do you think it is? If not, who stands out to you? Is there anybody what's better than Warner, Greenlaw, Al-Shaair? Those three guys are just, there's a strut. When you watch these linebackers warm up on the field, it's like you can see the Johnny Hollins brimming with confidence. They're bouncing around. They know they're good. They know they're deep. They're physically have a swagger to them. I love watching these guys warm up. It's like you can feel the confidence. They're great second level defenders with a ton of speed. Is it the best linebacking crew in the game, or are we missing somebody?
No, I think they are. I think they are. Fred Warner, Drake, Greenlaw, and Al-Shaair. Those guys are studs. And then you look at their second lineup. McCurry, Ball, Oren Burks, and Flanagan Fowles. I think their backup group with McCurry, Ball, Burks, and Flanagan Fowles is probably as good as half of the NFL when it comes to their starting units. And these are the backups for the 49ers, right? Those top six. Yeah, no, it's wild how good that group is from top to bottom. Because even number 5, 7, 8. Number 7 would be Curtis Robinson out of Stanford, and he's a
terrific special teamer. Yeah, Curtis Robinson's a really, really good special teamer. Demetrius Flanagan Foles has been in this defense now for a couple of years. There have been a couple highlights in these preseason games where he comes flying up. just absolutely you're watching everybody go at one speed, and here comes Flanagan Foles at a totally different speed. And then Marcelino McCrary Ball. Now, granted, he lit up the interview room. He came in there for 17 minutes and just guaranteed he was going to make the roster. Man, I mean, I love the confidence, and this kid has a swagger on the field that's really contagious. And he knows he's as good as these other guys, and he's athletically as good as these other guys. If it came right down to it, if they go with 5, you got to go with Burks. Flanagan Foles has been in the defense for longer, but maybe McCrary Ball might have the highest upside of all of them on that second unit. Man, I would go at 6 and keep McCrary Ball. When a guy's got those kinds of traits where he's productive, instinctive, and he's running sub 4.5 or right around 4.5, man, and he loves to run and hit, I don't see how I wouldn't feel comfortable cutting McCrary Ball. I think he could wind up being very, very good somewhere else. But can you go with 6 linebackers?
Again, that's kind of like if you take 6 running backs, right? You can. It's going to take somebody somewhere else. You're going to have to go one short somewhere else. The other thing, do they maybe move on from Flanagan Fowles and trade him and get something for him, or are they able to even make a trade with McCrary Ball? Because that's what they did last year. Remember, they traded a linebacker that wasn't going to make the roster, but they traded him to
Denver.
To Denver, and he played very well for them out there. And I think does something like that happen this year? Our team's just going to sit and wait? They have the talent there for somebody to make a move.
It's amazing when you think back to the Trent Baalke era when they had Gerald Hodges, and they really remember every back and their brother was going for 100 against this team, and they couldn't stop the run to save their life. And now they got like all kinds of linebackers just kind of laying around, and these guys are all damn good. I mean, it's like I would like to say that they're not and just be like, well, it's maybe just us being optimistic, but I don't think so. I think all these guys can play. All right, let's talk about the secondary, because there's been some emerging players in the secondary. First of all, who's going to get how many safeties do you think they go with?
That's the hard one. That was the question I asked today, because I don't know. Right now, do they go with 4 with Jimmy Ward being maybe not being able to go week 1? If he's not going to go week 1, do they stick and only go with 4, knowing they'll only have 3 heading into Chicago? I think that's where things get a little bit tricky. Maybe they have to carry somebody else, or maybe they're going to expect Dante Johnson to be the guy that's on the practice squad that comes off and is their 4th safety once the season starts. So it's interesting, because Tayshaun Gibson they just signed, and do they like him more than Tarvarius Moore? Because that would be the move, right? If Gibson's going to make this team, it's going to be over Tarvarius Moore. I think that's what to look for there.
I mean, I don't know. Tarvarius Moore still takes bad angles. I mean, he took some bad angles in this last game. He's physically really studly. I mean, he's fast, he's tall, he's very athletic. He might be one of the best athletes on the entire team. Tarvarius Moore is big, strong, fast for sure. But I'm looking at 4. I think it's Jimmy Ward and Odom and Hufanga and the guy they just picked up. Tayshaun Gibson. Gibson's got 27 career interceptions. That's outstanding ball production. It makes you think that, maybe the 49ers are now, because their safeties, Ward and Tart for years just did not produce turnovers. Maybe they're now emphasizing, safeties who do have a good nose for the ball, who do have a eye for it, who do come away with interceptions, because man, that seems to be like a major strength of Gibson.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think that, the 49ers would be well served to have somebody on the back end that can make some turnovers. I think Hufanga fits that bill a little bit. You see what he did at USC. He's been doing it in training camp. And you just got to have more, though. And that's been the weak point for Jimmy Ward. He's a really good top 100 player, but he doesn't get turnovers very much. And so that's part of the reason where a guy like Gibson maybe fits that bill.
Who's been running with the ones with Ward out at free safety?
George Odom.
Do you think, and Odom's thought to be a special teamer, he did have a pick in this last game after the Womack corner blitz, and Kellen Mond just threw it up for grabs, and Odom picked it out of the sky. Do you think Odom is the starting safety? First of all, do you expect Jimmy Ward to go? It sounds like Jimmy Ward has told Shanahan he's going to be there week 1.
Yeah, Kyle Shanahan hasn't said one way or another. I heard him this morning, and he wasn't saying that it didn't sound like it was a sure thing that Ward will be there week 1. It sounds like it's still a question mark. So that's I'm not sure what's going to happen there.
What do you, if it came down to Tarvarius Moore, Taylor Hawkins, and Quantrez Knight for one spot, who do you think they're going with?
Say those names again one more time.
Tarvarius, Taylor Hawkins, and Quantrez Moore, or Quantrez Knight.
I'd rather have Quantrez Knight than the other two.
Let's talk about Quantrez. His father, Tommy Knight, commented to me on Twitter when I had my final 53 and I had Quantrez on it, and he was obviously very happy to see that. I love this player going back to college. Now, I watch a ton of college football, and I watched UCLA, and this kid wore 24 at UCLA, and he played a number of different spots, and he's really active against the run. He made a lot of plays close to the line of scrimmage, and he's really always got guys lined up. He was the kind of the alpha of their defense, from what I was told from the people who covered the Bruins. I loved what I saw in college at Quantrez Knight. I'm not sure exactly why he didn't get drafted. Probably not enough deep speed or stopwatch speed. What are you seeing from Quantrez in the practices?
He's solid. He has that ability to come up and play in the. He's kind of like Jimmy Warden, that he can come up and play in the slot and do a good job in the slot, or he can sit in the back and play safety and make plays back there as well. So that's what they're like with Quantrez Knight. He has that positional versatility, can do two things completely different. Whether it's the man coverage up in the slot area or drop back, and everything I've seen from him has been very solid in those aspects. I don't want to see him playing outside corner, but in the slot and safety, that's good.
Yeah, he seems really instinctive. He's a very sure tackler. He also seems like he's one of these young players that kind of plays like a veteran. Have you noticed that? He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. You don't see him getting corrected a lot on the field. He seems like he's in the right place at the right time with the right idea, doing the right things. I mean, that's what I'm seeing. And I don't know what D'Amico's coaching him to do, but I haven't seen him called out on the field, and young DBs, that's a regular occurrence in camp typically.
Yeah, no, he's been very good with all that. He hasn't been somebody that I've seen make a bunch of mistakes or anything like that. He just seems like he's always in the right place, and he seems like he belongs on the field. That's the other big part of it. He doesn't look like he's out of place.
Yeah. Sons of Johnny O'Master donate $4.99. They say toughest home game, toughest road game. What are you going with, Jack?
I think it's going to be their home schedule is so tough. What's it going to be? Is it going to be Kansas City or Tampa Bay? Maybe Kansas City because of Patrick Mahomes and that offense, and Tampa Bay has so many injuries around the offensive line. Maybe that'll help him out in that game. But I'll go with Kansas City at home.
I'll say toughest home game is Tampa, just from the standpoint of Brady, family in the house. I'm sure that's a game that he's had circled. I expect him to play very, very well. So that would be the one I would think of as the home game that's tough. Road game, you know what? It just seems like anytime you're going to take on the Rams in their place, it's going to be tough. And the Niners get the Rams twice early in the year. I would have preferred those games to be late in the year, because I think the team that the Rams have late in the year is not going to be nearly as good as the team that they're playing the first half of the year with. I just think they're thin, and eventually that might be what cost them this year. Well, what about road game? Is there a road game that stands out to you as, oh no?
I would say maybe Denver, because going up against Russell Wilson at Mile High could be an issue, or the other one would be against Arizona in Mexico City, playing at that altitude, which is even almost twice as high as Denver on the road. I know it's a neutral site, but the Cardinals are a pretty good team.
No doubt. Just a couple last ones before we let you go. We're visiting with Jack Hammer, talking about the 49ers, who play their final preseason game tomorrow night. And then it's cut down time, and we'll see what the roster gets paired to and who stays and who goes. Jason Verrett has Pro Bowl caliber skills when healthy, but that when healthy part is really kind of that's kind of a major issue with him. And he just never seems like he's healthy. From what I'm hearing, he didn't actually suffer any kind of a setback in this camp. They're just kind of revving him up slowly. He's on the PUP list. Explain that, Jack. What exactly does that mean? He's out for a month, 6 weeks? When can we expect to see Verrett? And what's your thought of Verrett and how he fits in this secondary?
I think he's out for about 6 weeks. And I think their goal with him is really to have him for the second half of the season. Shanahan talked about it during camp, earlier on in camp. Kind of somebody asked about what the deal is with Verrett. And he went back to 2019 when Verrett was coming off of an injury. They put him in week 3, I think it was, against the Steelers at home. Remember that game? And he got burned. It was like the second play that he was in. They burned him for a deep ball, took him out, and he never played again that year. And Shanahan was saying, no, the last time he was doing this, coming off of an injury, they brought him in. They brought him along too quickly. And so now they're going to take their time. You know, they've got enough in front of them with Mosley and Ward. If those two stay healthy, that they don't need Verrett right away. If they can kind of weather it and they get to the second half of the year and all of a sudden Jason Verrett comes on, you know, week 8, week 9, that secondary is as good as anybody in the league with those 3 out there. You know, shoot, you put Sam Womack and Jason Verrett competing for the slot or whatever you want to do there. My gosh, that's a good group.
Yeah, my buddy who's a scout in the league called me after the draft and said, man, the 49ers got a steal. And I'm like, don't say it. Don't tell me. And let me guess. And then I guess like 5 guys before I got it. I mean, I said, this guy, no. That guy, no. And I'm like, I give up. He's like, Kalia Davis. Kalia Davis is a major steal. Kalia Davis can run. He's 315 pounds. He's got great movement ability. He's an outstanding interior pass rusher, but he has not hit the field yet. He's on the NFI list. Mm-hmm. What is the NFI list? I know it stands for non-football injury, but I know he had a surgery. He's rehabbing his way back. What have you heard about Kalia Davis? I'm sure you've probably watched some of his collegiate film, maybe talked to some of the other coaches or players about him. Give me your thoughts on Kalia Davis and how he fits into this picture, because my buddy, who's damn smart, I mean, I really defer to this guy. He claims that Kalia Davis was one of the best picks they had in the entire draft.
Yeah, the NFI list is the same as the PUP list. The only difference is because he injured himself in college, that list is the NFI list because it wasn't in the NFL. So NFI, PUP, it's basically the same thing, just the designation's a little bit different there. He's a stud. He's like DJ Jones, but quicker, you know, because he is wide, a little bit undersized in terms of height, but he's really wide, and I just think he's going to be I don't think you'll see much of him this year, but he's a guy that I think they have targeted for 2023 and beyond. He's going to be a really just a troublemaker in the middle of that defensive line when he's ready to go.
So you don't think we'll see him at all this year? Huh? It's not like a late in the year kind of thing. It's more of a next year kind of a thing.
I think it's a little bit more of a next year kind of thing. I mean, and this go way back, but think of like Kevin Fagan in the 86 draft, right? It was 87 when he started to come on. And I think that's kind of the same thing. Fagan was coming off of knee injuries at Miami when they drafted him. So I think it's very similar to that. Just, you know, you mentioned the other day, I think it was you that mentioned the 86 draft, and could this be the 86 draft for right. Kyle Shanahan? And I do. This is this group that they put together, even the the undrafted free agent guys, which would be like what the Niners did that year in the later rounds, because it was a 12-round draft back in those days. This is a special team, I think.
Well, that really bodes well for what's coming, because 86, they were great in 87. They won the Super Bowl in 88. They won the Super Bowl in 89. They made to the NFC Championship game in 90. I don't remember 91, but 92, they lost to the Cowboys at home. It was a great team. 93, they lost to the Cowboys there. Slightly less great team, or at least maybe Dallas was better. 94, they won it all. 95, they competed with Dallas, beat Dallas in the regular season, and ultimately Dallas would wind up winning the Super Bowl. But that 85 with Rice and 86 with the 8 starters fueled the greatest run in the history of the 49ers, which was 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94. I mean, that to me is right. That's the sweet spot. And now, let's just say last year they got Banks, who knows, but let's say Banks is a starter, Elijah Mitchell, and Trey. And then this year, if they wind up getting 12 contributors out of this draft between the guys they drafted and undrafted free agents, 2024, 5, 6, 7, this could be the deepest team in the conference. It could be one of the deepest teams and one of the youngest teams in the NFL, depending on how they pare down their roster. I think it's really an exciting time.
Yeah, no, it can be good for a very long time. Even Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa from the year before. I mean, Bosa's, I think, as good as anybody else really at defensive end. He's just been amazing. He just looked amazing in training camp. And Deebo Samuel, I think, when you get the ball in his hands, he's a playmaker wherever he gets it. You take that 19 forward draft with the 49ers, and they're set. If these rookies come along the way they should, they're set for a run here for about 4 or 5 years for sure.
Yep, no question. 916_49ers says this show is great. Let me tell you right now, this guy right here, Jack Hammer, is great. We'll finish on these last two. Dusty Gold says Elijah Mitchell's status. Is it a surprise to you that Elijah Mitchell that he's like the clear number one back and not going to play at all, basically, going forward in this preseason? Did you expect him to kind of get this kind of treatment? To me, he looked a little bigger and maybe a little stiffer than what I saw last year. That is a little concerning, but maybe he felt like he needed the extra pounds just to absorb some of the punishment that he takes on. What's your feeling on Elijah Mitchell? Is he going to hit the ground running week one, and their usage of him this summer is going to be wise, or is he going to look rusty in week one? What kind of year do you envision?
I think he can hit the ground running. If he's able to come back, if he's at that point where he can start practicing, say Saturday after this game in Houston, whenever their first practice is after the last game around cut down time, as long as he can get going right away, I think he'll be fine. Running backs are different, it's just a different game. He doesn't need to be taking the pounding. They know what they can get out of him. Keep him healthy. Don't get him banged around because he's going to carry the ball an awful lot, I think, this year. Last
one. I was looking at we were talking on the live stream last night about the NFC, and it's just like, I spent so much time looking at the Niners, so much time talking about the Niners. I spent very little time really analyzing the rest of the conference. When you start to look at the rest of the conference, it's a crappy conference. I mean, the Rams are very top heavy. And I read this stat that the Rams' top four guys, Ramsey, Donald, Kupp, and Stafford, missed a combined one game last year. So they got away with being a top heavy team last year. I don't think they get away with it this year. Then Green Bay lost Devontae. They got young receivers. Niners have been able to handle them. New Orleans has Winston. To me, that's not scary. Carolina's not bad, but they got Baker. I'm not a big Dallas fan, not a big Eagle fan. Tampa's quarterback's 45 and just took a 10-day vacation to a exotic location with his family in the middle of camp. Their backup is Trask and Gabbert. I mean, if you said to me right now, who's going to the Super Bowl, I'm going to take Buffalo out of the AFC in a much better conference. And almost by default, I'm taking the 49ers. I think it's Niners-Bills going to the bowl. Give me your breakdown. Who do you have going to the Super Bowl? Who is the team in the NFC that you think potentially stands between the 49ers and another trip to the Super Bowl?
Man, Bills 49ers, that's a flashback right there, Larry. We can hear that every year for about 10 years. No, I think you're right. I mean, if Trey Lance is who Kyle Shanahan expects him to be, the 49ers are a Super Bowl team. They've got the defense. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. They've got playmakers on the outside. They've got George Kittle. If they stay healthy, this is a Super Bowl team. I don't, like you said, you go through the conference, there's not a dominant team in the NFC. The 49ers, for as much as they struggled last year, they were in the NFC Championship game. They were what, 3-5 at one point last year, and they were still able to put it together with a quarterback who had a bum arm and a bum finger. His thumb on his throwing hand was hurt, and he played in 2 games with a shoulder that had needed surgery. So I think if Trey Lance is who everybody expects him to be, and who Shanahan says this is a team that goes to the Super Bowl.
Dude, I love your coverage, man. I think you're as good as it gets. Tell people who, on game day are sitting there going, where's Jack Hammer going to be? What's he going to be putting out? What are you doing pregame? What are you doing in game? What are you doing post game? What's the Jack Hammer game plan for Niners Texans, the final preseason game going down tomorrow night in sweaty Houston, Texas? Of course, so I think it's an indoor stadium though, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. But I'll have an article for the Press Democrat, 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. That's inside the 49ers blog over there. I'll have a pregame article there. I'll do a show on YouTube at some point, probably early in the afternoon. And then during the game, there'll be a live blog, so you can get instant analysis there with that. And then afterwards, I'll do my write-up and do a post-game show for everybody on my channel as well.
Long day at the office, man.
Yeah.
Dude, I love your work ethic, man. When I worked in the CFL, the coach that I worked for, the defensive coordinator, was like, Larry, you're lazy. You're lazy. And I said, Coach, I'm working hard. I showed up at 7. I was here till 9 o'clock. You're lazy. You're a lazy person. He goes, if you follow me around, I'll make you so you're not lazy. And I said, great. What time are you going to pick me up? I'll pick you up in the morning. And I'm like, what time? He's like 4:45. So he picks me up at 4:45. And then he's like, I go, Coach, I got a girlfriend and she wants to know what time I'm going to tell you to be home before the bars close. He would literally drop me off at 1:15. And then as he was dropping me off at 1:15, he'd be like, Larry? I'm like, yeah. He'd be like, I'll see you at 4:45. I'm like, oh my God. My coach, I mean, even if I wanted to get down, I don't know if I have enough energy or time to get down. I mean, my God, are you kidding me? What the hell? And he's like, you're lazy. This is how we work in pro football. You want to be in pro football, Larry? You got to work. 4:45 to 1:15. Those are our hours. And then I said, well, when do we rest? He's like, in the off season. And
that's when you get down, Larry. You got to get down, but you got to wait until the off season.
Needless to say, she left. I mean, it was like 3 weeks later. I'm like out there looking for a new girlfriend. You're never home. We never go anywhere. Bob will take me to a movie. I'm like, you know what? He doesn't work for Bill or Bannock. All right. If you work for Bill or Bannock, you're lazy. If you work 15 hours. Yeah. Unbelievable. Hey, no, seriously though, you work at it. I love it. Sons of Johnny Lemaster. Larry, you're lazy. Oh man. I thought I was hard working too, Jack. I was like, I was living with a bunch of guys who I went to Sac State with. And these guys, slept till 10, smoke some grass, go to the gym, screw around with their girlfriend, maybe go to a class or two, go out to have a couple drinks at a bar, smoke some more grass, play some pool. You know what I mean? They were like, dude, you're the hardest working guy I've ever met. And then, seriously, I'm like, really? Because the guy I worked for called me lazy. You're lazy. All right, man, Jack. Good to see you, brother. Hey, have a great game day. I love your coverage. Everybody follow Jack. Tell them where they can find you on YouTube because you're blowing up on YouTube too.
Yeah, just go to Jack Hammer _NFL. Search that up, and you'll find the channel. All kinds of stuff over there. A lot of videos and my own stuff as well.
Jack, have a great night. Yeah. There you go, Jack Hammer. Everybody, you're lazy. Well, Jack ain't lazy. I'll tell you that. Jack is not lazy. Jack hustles. Dusty Gold. Larry, lazy and smashed. Mike Thompson. Larry still calls it grass. LOL. Once again, Sons of Johnny Lemaster. You're lazy. I thought I was hustling too. I thought I was like the hustling hustler. You're lazy. And if you don't, you're not like me, Larry. I work hard. You're lazy. All right, let's take a time out right now. We'll pay the bills and say goodbye next on The Krueg Show.
Larry Krueger here for Telmetrics. Thanks to Casey Bateman and the good people at Telmetrics. If you're an occupational therapist, if you're an orthopedic surgeon, a chiropractor, a physical therapist of any kind, Telmetrics is designed for you to use in your practice and will greatly benefit your patients. Telmetrics uses computer vision and artificial intelligence and provides a platform for outpatient rehab therapy services, both in the clinical and the telehealth environments. So using Telmetrics can improve your patient's experience and much more. So for all your sports injury needs, or if you're a physical rehabilitation specialist of any kind, make sure you use telmetrics.co, TELMETRIX.co. And thanks to Casey Bateman and all the good people at Telmetrics for being a proud sponsor of the Krueg. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Dan Coach Emilio. Dan is a buddy, and he is a phenomenal retirement planning specialist. And you can contact him today at securemoney.com or at his number, 9 925-628-9966. There's a lot of uncertainty in our world right now, and you want to make sure that your money is secure. That is the key. Danny's got 25 years of experience, born and raised right here in the Bay Area, and he can help you get an immediate 10% premium bonus on your principal retirement account. So give him a call, 925-628-9966. He'll make an appointment with you, and you can sit down. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of a deal. He'll consult with you and come up with a strategy to get you going to where you want to be. Once again, 925-628-9966, securemoney.com on the web. And thanks to Tony Cassera and the good people at Cassera's Italian Menswear. They are housing the Krueg Show t-shirts, and they're a proud sponsor of the show as well. The Krueg Show t-shirt, the Krueg Show podcast t-shirt is available there at their store in Dublin. Their address is 7372 San Ramon Road in Dublin, California. And go see Tony Cassera and get yourself a Krueg Show t-shirt and support the show. And special thanks to our sponsor, New York Style Italian Sausage. That's right, NewYorkStyleSausage.com is their website. Phenomenal product, whether it's the breakfast sausage, the Italian mild, the Italian spicy, the chorizo. You cannot go wrong with New York Style Italian Sausage. Once again, NewYorkStyleSausage.com. Often imitated, never equaled.
So New York Style Sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never gonna deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
Hey, do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York Style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it, guaranteed.
All right, that does it, everybody. That's it for the chat. 916_49er. I like to grab my sausage during the Pasquale commercial. Thank you. Carlo P. What's Larry's sleep number? Larry, you loved being chewed out. I did love being chewed out by Bill Urbanek. Rest in peace, Billy. I love you, brother. And thanks to Jack Hammer. He was awesome. Follow Jack Hammer on YouTube. Check him out in the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. Seriously, the guy works at it and he knows his stuff. He's really, really good. I'm back tomorrow. We're going to do 49er coverage. I'll be on Talk Sport out of London for a little pregame. Then postgame, we'll have our breakdown, little Niner live stream tomorrow night. Should be a lot of fun. So thanks to everybody who was in the chat tonight. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow. Game day. Thanks again to everybody.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to hassle. Yeah.